So we're reading from Zechariah 9, beginning in verse 9 and verse 10. These are the words of God. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace to the nations. His rule shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. You know, I have personally never been to a royal parade, but I have seen one or two of these royal parades on television. Whenever royalty comes to visit, hundreds upon hundreds of interested people line the streets just to see and celebrate the occasion. You know, many centuries before Jesus lived, an Old Testament prophet named Zechariah invited the church of his day to prepare for celebrating the greatest of all royal visits. It would be a royal visit unrivaled in its magnitude, unrivaled in its significance, and giving everyone unrivaled reason to shout and to cheer. In verse 9, Zechariah told his people, his church, that this king who was coming to visit them is coming to visit them in Jerusalem. But first, Zechariah had to set the tone. He had to set the tone for this visit. He had to set the expectations for this grand visit. And as he prophetically and eagerly prepared his people for this royal visitation, he writes the headline, and he says to his people, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem." This is the headline. This is going on the poster. This is it. Clearly, Zechariah imagined something of a palpable excitement taking hold of the people, that they indeed would be overcome with joy, such that they would be shouting and rejoicing greatly. But take a deeper look into this text. There's an important detail that we really do not want to miss. Royalty is coming. Royalty is coming, a king no less. But the king is to be received by a daughter. O daughter of Zion, O daughter of Jerusalem. The king is coming, but the king is coming to be received by a daughter. It turns out that this king who is coming is a parental king. He's not just a distant king, he's a parental king. He claims fatherly rights over those who do receive him. And this may sound quite strange to us. We know of kings and queens who do rule from their palaces, and most of the time they are very benevolent rulers, especially in Western monarchies. Yet for all their benevolence and smiles and kindness, we know there remains this relational chasm and professional distance between us commoners and royalty. There's just a gap, isn't there, between us commoners and royalty. After all, commoners like you and I don't get to run into Buckingham Palace, into their kitchen and grab a biscuit when we feel a little bit snackish. Commoners don't ordinarily get to high-five Prince William. Commoners don't get to jump on the Queen's sofa. There are many things that us commoners do not get to do when it comes to royalty. And why is that? Because there's no family tie. There's no family tie between us. But the children of royalty, they do get to enjoy many in-house privileges that commoners do not. And that's what Zechariah is trying to get across in his prophecy. When the king finally arrives, those who welcome and celebrate him won't be treated like commoners who have to keep their distance, like people who may look but cannot touch. This king, Zechariah said, will welcome and love his subjects as his very own children, as dear to him as a daughter. When he comes and he is received, he will treat you with the kind of affection a father treats his own children, as a daughter. And I sure would like to know a king like that, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you love to know royalty who just welcomed you as family? What's more, the fact this daughter of all daughters, is summoned to rejoice and shout gladly at the arrival of her father, the king, is truly revealing. As we read through the Old Testament, we do come across this title, this term, Daughter of Zion. And it may sound really friendly and healthy, giving you all those warm family vibes when you read it. Daughter of Zion, you think, that's some good fatherly relationship right there. But that's not how it was during the Old Testament times. Most usually, when the Old Testament talks about the daughter of Zion, the daughter of the king, this daughter is not in a happy relationship with her father, the king. She is rebelling. She is sneaking out of home. She is betraying her father's love. She is sinning. For example, Isaiah described her demise and delinquency this way. He said, the daughter of Zion is left like a besieged city. She's completely empty. Later, Isaiah also talked about her as a captive daughter. Not free, not delighting in life, captive. In Lamentations, we hear this, how the Lord in his anger has set the daughter of Zion under a cloud. The daughter of Zion, the king's daughter, is usually depicted negatively in the Old Testament. It is a way of articulating her fractured and volatile relationship with her fatherly king. And yet, for all that said, in our text, Zechariah is pleading, calling upon this daughter to welcome and celebrate her fatherly king's arrival. Rejoice and shout aloud, O daughter of Zion. And so the question is, what could possibly convince her to have this change of heart toward her fatherly king? She had been in high-handed rebellion against him for much of the Old Testament. And Zechariah invites her and says, look, he's coming. And when he comes, celebrate his arrival. What could possibly make for a change of mind? It is because the fatherly king does desire to be on the best of terms with his daughter. He is coming to mend the fractures and the upheaval and the prickliness that she introduced to the relationship. He has set his heart on a happy reunion with his daughter. This is what the fatherly king has come to do. You know, if this is the reason, the driving motivation behind the fatherly king's visit, it tells us a lot about the fatherly king, doesn't it? If this is what motivates him to come to this wayward daughter, so that he can fix the relationship, so he can mend the broken ties, it tells us a lot about what this fatherly king is like. It certainly tells us about his undeviating commitment and his unfaded love for his daughter. Zechariah opens this truth to us in verse 9, and he said to the king's rebellious daughter, "Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on the colt, the foal of a donkey." You know, and words like righteous and salvation can trip us up. We tend to think of them as those big words that we only ever hear in church. But Zechariah has far more practical uses for words like that. He was telling his people, his church, that the fatherly king, what the fatherly king is like. He wants to tell them, when he says that he is righteous and he's having salvation, look, I'm telling you what your fatherly king is really like and what is in his power and his nature to do. You know, other prophets made the same point. Isaiah told his people, his church, what the divine king is like and what is in his power and nature to do. He said of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. Now, both Isaiah and Zechariah were saying something like this. The fatherly king is always going to do what is good and right in the way that he governs, makes peace, brings justice, and joyfully rescues his daughter. He is always going to do the right thing. And the daughter of Zion is to come to her senses over this. She is to come to her senses and believe and love this about her fatherly king. After all, rightness or righteousness is not an uncharacteristic impulse for her father. Rather, being righteous, always doing what is right, true, good, and beautiful, is his constant disposition. It is who he is all of the time. And should such a righteous fatherly king come for his unrighteous daughter, there would be plenty to celebrate, wouldn't you agree? If this magnificent father, abounding in unfading love, would come for his daughter who has spat in his face time and time again, wouldn't there be so much to celebrate about that kind of king? Zechariah condenses this into the thought of the king who is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. So not only is the righteous fatherly king coming to rule the world, which is what verse 10 tells us about, and even as Isaiah told us, he is coming to reunite with his daughter. He is coming to love and restore her. He is coming to open his heart and his arms to her, despite all the belligerence that she has thrown at him. This is the idea behind salvation. And the Old Testament is colored with this universal human need for salvation. The Old Testament taught Israel, the church of that time, of her need for salvation. Routinely, it showed her that not only the ugliness of sin, but it also showed her the ugliness of her own specific sins. The Old Testament tells us that sin is a dreadfully ugly thing, but then it also shows us we are the ones doing the dreadfully ugly things. And yet time and time again, the Old Testament church was reminded that they lack the resources to make this sin problem go away. Even though it is ugly and terrifying, you don't have the resources to make it go away. They are incapable of reaching up to salvation. If there is going to be salvation, it must be a salvation that comes to them, not one that they are able to provide for themselves. It is a salvation that must come to them. And this salvation is what the fatherly king has come to deliver. When this fatherly king comes for his daughter, his people, his church, he brings salvation to her. Such is the promise of the Christian gospel. Such is the central message of Easter. But when and where will this kingly visit take place? It's a big promise, but when and where is this going to happen? Verse 9 said that the fatherly king is coming, and he is coming to Jerusalem, which of course is the ancient center of biblical worship and religion. So at least we know where to look. We know roughly where to look, but there are still some blanks that need to be filled in. Imagine living 500 years before Jesus. You're part of a community who is carefully transferring Zechariah's prophecy from one generation to another. Your people are keeping a watchful eye on Jerusalem, waiting and wondering who this fatherly king might be and how you might know about his arrival. To help everyone out, Zechariah identified the defining marker of the kingly visit. It's going to happen in Jerusalem. But to make sure that you don't miss it, here's the defining marker of his visit. He said, when you see someone show up in Jerusalem, and he's doing prophetic and kingly things, he's bringing righteous justice, he's giving sight to the blind, he's proclaiming the good news of salvation, he is establishing his kingdom. When you see that person, and he rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, it's go time. That is the call sign of the fatherly king's visit, the one that you have so long expected. And we sit back for a second or two and we think, man, that just sounds crazy and weird. That just sounds like the oddest thing I've ever heard about. A prophecy about a donkey. What a strange thing to include in the Bible. Why bother with that kind of detail? What's so special about this donkey anyhow, we ask ourselves. If the person riding the donkey really is the divine fatherly king of prophecy, why doesn't he ride something with a bit more presence, like a tiger or a Clydesdale? Why a donkey? Of all the things, man. That's not going to draw a headline, is it? No, the donkey is key to the integrity of the prophecy. The donkey is key to the integrity of the prophecy. Why? Because war-making kings arrive on imposing animals like horses. It is war-making kings who arrive on the big animals. But the fatherly king is not here for war, not at this moment. He is here for his daughter. He is here to make peace with her. And for that, a humble donkey is the perfect animal for the task. He is here for his daughter, and a humble donkey is perfect for the task. And that is precisely the connection which is made in Matthew's gospel account. And we read this earlier in the service, didn't we? Matthew said that Jesus' triumphal entry to Jerusalem while riding a donkey took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Zechariah. The donkey anchors the truth that we Christians celebrate, that Jesus is the fatherly king. It is Jesus who is the fatherly king, the righteous king, the saving king who has come for his delinquent daughter, the church. This is one reason Jesus deliberately entered Jerusalem on the back of a donkey. It was intentional. It wasn't accidental. It was intentional that he did this, so that he would be gladly welcomed and celebrated according to Zechariah's invitation, where the daughter of Jerusalem, the church, would shout aloud that her salvation and her happy reunion with her Father is being made real. It is happening. It is right here for you. But there is more. Another part of Zechariah's prophecy about the fatherly king's mission of salvation was this: I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace to the nations. His rule shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. You know, it's easy to see in hindsight now how Jesus fulfilled the donkey aspect of Zechariah's prophecy. Like that's pretty easy for us to see. But it's harder to see how Jesus fulfilled this part, the peace to the nations part of the prophecy. That's because much of this part of the prophecy is yet to be fulfilled. Even so, as Christians, we are convinced. If Zechariah's prophecy was right about such a small detail, such a minute detail as Jesus riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, then the rest of the prophecy must surely follow. Like if he gets the details right, surely the big things he definitely gets right. And this would include, according to verse 10, the complete disarmament of all the king's enemies throughout the world, on every continent, in every city, on every street corner, and nothing less will suffice. Think again how Zechariah envisioned this grand visitation unfolding over time. He, the fatherly king, Jesus, shall speak peace to the nations. His rule shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Zechariah expected and anticipated and prophesied global allegiance to the fatherly king, Jesus. Other prophets and writers support this grand vision for the future. Isaiah said of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. Habakkuk said the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And the psalmist said, all the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord. And all the enemies, or all the families of the nations shall worship before you. The fatherly King Jesus, will be welcomed and celebrated from sea to sea, even to the ends of the earth. If this is what the future holds, my question is simply this: what do you make of Zechariah's ancient prophecy? Do you see royalty? Do you see your fatherly king? I ask this pointedly, and I do ask it personally of each one of you. I think about the original statement made by Zechariah, "Behold, your king is coming to you." Your king is coming to you. The invitation here is not just to acknowledge the founder and the central figure of Christianity. The invitation is to see the fatherly king, Jesus, as your king. Will you have him? Will you receive him? Will you, O daughter of Zion, reunite on terms of peace and forgiveness with your father? The fatherly king has come with a disposition of unmitigatable love to rescue you, to forgive you, to win your affections, and to welcome you home. All our longings for peace and salvation is found in him alone. So I ask, will you have him? The fatherly king will surely have you. Let's pray.